Hi there. What school are you from? Nice to see you. How are things going? Alternate group.
Well, you may want to, wait a couple extra minutes. There's a lot of people still getting coffee and donuts downstairs.
Try to remember. If I don't, you guys tell me. Repeat the question. Hi. Hi. A little bit more time to see. People are trickling in very slowly from coffee, so. Hi there. So while people are trickling in, and I'm going to give it a few more minutes, the folks who just came in, if you have any burning questions that you want to make sure. A very different format. From But I still think there's seeds of applicability. Right, there's only 2 reviews. No, I mean, they actually started the review function after this class. Look at how many reviews, but it is nice that the 2 people who audited. Other thing, anybody have any burning questions you want to make sure I talk about?
On that process.
All right, yeah, I can definitely talk a little bit about what I know of the process. The way Harvard X works with edX. Assessment? I've got lots of really good stats about how people liked this course. Okay. And spoiler alert, it was a success. So we were pretty shocked at how successful it was. So I don't want to build you up only to think that this is a downer kind of thing, but it had really good feedback. So all right, I'm going to just kind of jump in and get started. I'm being very ambitious and using dual screens, so hopefully it'll work out. So this is JuryX. Welcome to my presentation. I'm going to talk about how we created JuryX and actually how it rolled out. Then I'm going to talk about what's next we are doing. Then a little bit about why are we talking about this. As strange as this course was, I do think, and I'll say this again, That there are some seeds of applicability, that there are some things we could take from our experience at JuryX that might be applicable to other law schools. Who am I? I am the manager of teaching, learning, and curriculum law school. Basically what that is a academic technology group, but also I run the case studies program. My background is I'm an MBA. I was getting my MBA at Simmons College in Boston. They taught with the case study method, and I loved it when I was in classes. I was an English major. All went off in my head. Oh, I could actually write these things and do business kind of stuff and English stuff at the same time. Actually did that. I went to work for Harvard Business School and case studies teaching notes about 10 years. And I also did a little bit of consulting on the side. Then in 2011, the law school hired me to start their case study program there. Basically what it is a website. I'm going to show it to you at the end of the presentation as long as the case studies program is an online portal for all. Oh, I'm sorry, should I stand here? Yeah. Okay. Clipping my wings, but okay. It's an online portal for all of the case study, I would call experiential material that is being produced at Harvard Law School. A lot of what's on the case study website is free or very small charge, like 99 cents. Others created by a group in affiliation with our exec ed program, those are more expensive, but we allow anybody who's creating the content, the groups, the programs that are creating the content to set their price points and their kind of the rules around the distribution of their materials. So a lot of it though is free, including the stuff we created for this course. So in 2012, I got the academic technologies people as part of my group, and so now we're sort of in this one big happy family where we support faculty in everything from the LMS, which is now Canvas, to creating a case study if they think they want to try that, to using clickers because they want to have more audience participation. So we're sort of jacks of all trades. So how did this get started? Well, it started with Charlie Nesson. He is a legend at Harvard Law School. He's been there since the end of the 60s. Was in the W.R. Grace case. He defended Daniel Ellsberg. I mean, really, that's kind of a big wow, you know. And he was a founder of the Berkman Center for Internet and Society. He started off teaching evidence, but he's taught a ton of stuff, criminal law, torts. Recently, though, he's been teaching two courses, one called Internet and Society and another one called American Jury. And I met him because he wanted to create a series of case studies for his Internet and Society class. He wanted to use the case studies as sort of a building block in the class for students to actually, sort of roll up their sleeves and solve some real problems and discuss, be more participatory. So we did. We created, as you see, big sport in Brazil was one, the soccer riots kind of thing. It was a short case that just prompted what would you do if you were hired by the government, or what would you do if you were hired by the grassroots associations that were, protesting against the government. If you're a counsel, how would you counsel them? So things like that. We had another one on online education and MOOCs, which is a foreshadowing of what came later. We had already created WikiLeaks case, and he added an article about Edward Snowden to talk about activism and privacy and the relationship with the government, and then copyright. So he really liked how the case studies worked, and he was thinking at that time about a process in his American Jury class, how to create sort of a simulation of a jury experience. So in the summer before, let me go back. In the summer before, in the summer of 2014, it all sort of came together for him with this idea that, with this idea that he wanted to create a process that involved some level of case study prompt or some sort of a prompt and a discussion, but he wanted to make it framed around a jury simulation. So in his American jury class, he wanted to have students view a provocation or a prompt, a video prompt, and then they were to convene in class and talk about it, and they had to come up with a unanimous verdict or be a hung jury, and then they would talk about it in class. And then the next case, he would have them actually chat online in the class to insert a sort of online component into this deliberation. And then they would talk about it in class. How did the method of communication change the way you deliberated? And then he moved it towards, all right, outside of the classroom. We want you to watch a video and deliberate completely online outside of the classroom, and then come back to the class the next time and talk about how did that change how things went. And finally, he wanted to expand this where the students would invite friends and family, have the whole thing, the whole cycle go online, but the students would sort of be the mediators or the proctors of the discussion. So his idea was to get the students to think outside the boundaries of the classroom and think about this as a methodology that they've sort of learned how to do. So as he was thinking about that, he realized that this online component could actually be expanded. And along came the HarvardX proposals, the call for proposals. And he decided he would ask HarvardX to create a MOOC based on this idea of online deliberation. And this is an excerpt from what he put in his proposal. And he was telling them it's not a course, it's a sort of a methodology. So he didn't want to create a MOOC, he wanted to create an online experience for the students. And this is just a very wordy slide about what HarvardX is, but we're talking about what is MOOCs. And just at the way the Harvard system works is that HarvardX is an independent group that is the production studio, if you think about it like that. So they will give a series of grants to faculty who write proposals. There's a faculty committee that decide which ones get it. And if you're accepted, they give you a pot of money and they create the content and they give you a project manager and they hire TAs. And they'll actually design and create the MOOC. But edX is the platform on which it resides. And edX is a completely separate entity. They don't have any governance systems or anything like that they share. It's an MIT and Harvard consortium, and they built the platform. So that's the difference between HarvardX and edX. So immediately we had challenges. We were like, oh my gosh, the typical MOOC, here's a slide of a typical MOOC. This is Charles Fried, and he does contracts. And the typical MOOC is, and what HarvardX is very good at, is filming the faculty member. And they pick a faculty member and they film it, and they have this really cool streaming transcript. It renders really nicely online, and then they follow it up with a quiz. Boom, boom, you're done. There's a discussion board that's pretty bare bones, but if you're having trouble and the TA can clarify something, that's how they do it. So rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. That's pretty much what they do. Well, that is great, and they do beautiful content, really great content delivery, but it doesn't really lend itself to creative pedagogies, like this idea of students talking online. It doesn't support it like at all. So we were kind of up against this sort of series of gaps. And on one hand, you had Charlie's vision of this not a course thing. He wanted students to learn from each other, from peers, more than they learned from him. He wanted them to be self-reflective. He wanted it to be a highly interactive class. It was synchronous. These discussions were synchronous, happening in real time. It wasn't a go weed through the content, self-directed, self-timed, like most of the MOOCs have been up until now. And he wanted it to be highly topical. He didn't want to create his lectures and stick them in a can and have them be good for the next 10 years. This stuff he wanted to create and talk about, wanted it to be topics of the day. So HarvardX was great in that it gave us a budget to create this content, and edX was great because it has this established online platform, and they do have some really nice analytics. But in the middle was how to create a debriefing mechanism, how to create a self-evaluation or self-reflection, and how to create the synchronous discussion as well. So that was all gaps that we identified. So it takes a village to create this crazy unicorn, and it really did. So JuryX was involved, as you saw, law school. So I was involved from the law school, as well as Charlie. edX as the platform. The Division of Continuing Ed helped out because they actually created a course about JuryX, a JuryX type course for DCE online at the same time. So we were able to kind of kill two birds with one stone there. And I'll introduce you to UnHangout, which was the way we did the synchronous discussions. So this is the team. This is all of us that we met weekly all through the fall of 2014. We got to know each other really well. Went out for beers a lot. And we all started to create, we were starting to form the process of how this course would run. We would provide a prompt to the participants, and then we would film Charlie introducing the subject and posing the question that they were to deliberate. Then they would be doing the online deliberation. Then they would report back and share the results. But we had to create the prompts. Some of it was created, but most of it wasn't. We had to video Charlie doing these things. We had to figure out how and when and all the logistics of the deliberation and how and when to report back. So as the fall wore on, we started to get more clarity about how we would build the syllabus and what modules we'd use. And I realized I'm kind of going. But we had 3 videos, short animations created by this company called Edimation. And I'll show you one of them, which put forth the facts of these 3 cases. And so we used Vosburgh v. Putney as sort of module 0, which they just were to look at it and think about it and deliberate as a jury of 1. And then come up with their response. And then Paulsgraf, similar situation, a short video. And then Hebert was another one. And then once they got used to the system and the process using those 3 short vignettes, we moved into the more topical case studies. And we had 4 case studies. They were about 10 to 15 pages long, more of a classical case study, if any of you have seen them from the business school. We tried to put in a multimedia component to all of them. We tried to film like a protagonist for example, legalization of marijuana. In Jamaica, we had Mark Golding, the Justice Minister, come to Harvard, and Charlie actually videotaped him in sort of a Charlie Rose kind of format. So they did this question and answer kind of format. We were lucky enough to find some online videos of Edward Snowden and NSA rebuttal as TED Talks. I don't know if any of you saw those TED Talks, but we added those in to kind of create this prompt for students. So those were the topical ones. But it was really difficult to get all of this content written and filmed at the same time in a few months. And the course was due to debut on March 10th. We started really working in this like in October. It was like, we're all like, oh my God, how are we gonna get this done? And I hired the case writers. That was sort of my piece of this, was to hire and oversee the case writers to create the case studies. I had some experience with video. What I knew about video was how hard it was to create and the time-consuming nature of it. You have so many iterations. You get the raw footage and you have to, put the cuts in and work with the videographer and the editor. It's really time-consuming. And what was happening was they do have really wonderful videographers and editors at HarvardX, but there was a bottleneck. We just couldn't get it all done fast enough. We started to get worried that we weren't going to make the deadline. And in came DCE. And DCE online education is actually directed by Rebecca Nesson, who happens to be Charlie's daughter. And she and Charlie decided to create a similar course for DCE's online education portal. And they were about 2 weeks ahead of us. And DCE has videographers and editors too, thank goodness. And so all of a sudden, we had like sort of 2 teams working on it. And the bottleneck kind of opened up, and we started to really chug out these prompts and videos. So there's a screenshot of Charlie doing a prompt on what in the deliberations, and the woman with the long hair is actually Rebecca. So she was actually directing and prompting him through this, and it was hard because we just didn't have much time, and Charlie's ideas are very free flowing, and by from the time that we started writing a case to when we were done with it and trying to film, he had different ideas. Like he might have gone through 5 or 6 different iterations of what he really wanted the students to deliberate. So it was constantly this moving target. But we did finally nail it all down, and we got all of the footage in the can. But we did still have some questions about other gaps, and the big gap was, how do you do this synchronous component of discussion in a MOOC? Hundreds of people, thousands of people. How do you do that? So there is this thing called UnHangout. Has anybody heard of UnHangout? It's free. You can use it. MIT Media Lab and the MacArthur Foundation have funded this. It's very cool. It's a super lobby. It's based on Google Hangouts. So you go in to the lobby. It supports up to 300 people. You can have a live synchronous event. You can show a video. It can be live, or it can be video from YouTube or something like that. And everybody kind of comes in. There's a running chat, and you can create breakout rooms. And the breakout rooms are based on Google Hangout. So once you go into a breakout room, you're in Google Hangout. And it's video, and there's also a chat. They all convene into the UnHangout, and Charlie will give them the prompt about what they're supposed to deliberate, and then they go into their small groups and they deliberate.
Is that text?
Video. But there's also a chat function. So if somebody's video cuts out or whatever, they could chat. The other thing we were working on, and this was during the residential class as well.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so is someone designated?
Really good question. No. The idea was it was not going to be moderated. Well, it couldn't be. Think about it. All those small groups, how many people? It would take an army. Yeah. So no, it wasn't. Yeah.
It seems like you would need it.
Yep.
Or say, okay, I'm
Sure.
I don't know if that's,
Yeah. No, I mean, and we'll talk about when we talk about the feedback part, but so we were worried about this, the moderation. Believe me, in our team meetings, we're like, well, what are we going to do, right? And I actually had somebody who had heard about this project, and she was talking to me. She worked for FAS, and she's like, are you crazy? Do you know what chat rooms are like? Have you seen comments at the Boston Globe? These people are nasty, What are you going to do when you open this up to the world? And these are hot topics. People aren't going to be nice. And so I said, jeepers, maybe we're crazy to do this. I don't know. Quick answer is, in the end, it was fine. We really didn't have anybody acting badly that we heard. No, we don't know. We didn't have insight into all the chats or even any of them. But what we decided to do was we put it on them as participants. And the way we did that was with this self-reflection survey. That's one of the ways. So we created this Likert scale thing, and we asked people to debrief afterwards with 2 surveys, this one and this one, which was more, how did you find and how did the process work? But this one was about them as people and how they deliberated in the small group. Were they passionate or not? Were they confident or were they disengaged? Were they flexible or inflexible? Were they a listener or a talker? Were they, there was all kinds of different polar opposites, and we asked people to put themselves on the list of where they were. And the idea behind that was, if you're thinking about and being self-aware about how you are, what we found when we rolled this out to the class, the residential class, is everybody was sort of ideal. you know, they were agreeable, maybe they were leaders, they didn't talk too much, everybody was sort of in the middle in this ideal person, right? Everybody wants to be this ideal person, so maybe if we ask them about it, it'll prompt them to be closer to that. It'll just be a self-awareness. And it seems to have worked because we didn't have any real disrespect going on. The debrief survey was longer and it had lots of questions, not just about how did you find as a jury, what was your answer, were you a hung jury or what, but more about, was your voice heard? Was everybody's voices heard? Were you a leader in the deliberation, or were you more of a follower? What was your process like? Did you elect a leader or not? Did somebody emerge as a leader or not? You know, things like that. And we also asked, what were the arguments people used? Did you feel persuaded? Did you think the verdict was fair? So all of that sort of thing. And I'll just keep this going. We asked them to fill that out after each deliberation. So we put it together. This was the process. We had an outline of the module and its goals for them to read. They come in, they read the outline of the module and its goals. There was always a video and some sort of reading, or very rarely there was no video at all, but I think actually we got video for everything. There was always some sort of a reading. And then we would have the deliberation prompt from Professor Nesson, and then they would choose an UnHangout time. We gave them 3 to 5 options per module. They deliberated, and then they debriefed. We asked them to post to the discussion forum, and they did at the beginning, and then it kind of dropped off. And they had to do the self-reflection question, and we also had an honor code where they could earn a participation certificate. So let me take a break here, and I'll actually show you the course. So in this over here, I'm going to just play so you can see Charlie a little bit. Does everybody see that okay?
The course is not the typical exercise in information transfer. The information you receive from me is not the important part. It's merely the structure within which dialogue takes place. This idea of dialogue goes back to Socrates. It is based fundamentally on an idea of truth, veritas, the slogan of Harvard. The idea that truth has 2 sides to it. From a litigator's point of view, the truth sometimes lies at the bottom of a bottomless pit. Socrates understood it and approached it from both sides. That's the essence of dialogue. And the essence of the educational strategy, I have to say, of Harvard Law School. The idea is we learn in exchange with each other. We learn how to exchange with each other.
That's a little bit of background he gave them about dialogue. I always use this music.
I need to tell you what we're going to do. First, we're going to learn a few things about context. Then organize into small groups. Within the groups, you will introduce yourselves according to a format that I'll suggest to you. And then you will observe what I call a stimulation, a provocation, something that each of you observe in common that will pose an issue. I will pose it to you and ask you to deliberate. Deliberate to a conclusion. 3 possibilities. At the end of the deliberation, your jury may be unanimous in a positive direction, may be unanimous in a negative direction, may be hung. And at the conclusion, I will solicit from you information about your process, the result of your process, both individually and as a collective jury. We will integrate that information here and display it in a following session so that each of you see the result, along with our best effort to frame it for you. We will begin by deliberating very interesting, but not emotionally loaded cases. The purpose being to become acquainted with the deliberation process, literally the methodologies by which we connect, those being face-to-face, online, online synchronous, online asynchronous, and actually organizing ourselves into groups and conducting a deliberation and a polling on these warm-up cases is the frame that we build for looking at more serious issues.
Get the gist of Charlie. So just as an overview for the course, you can see that the modules here are on the left, and they can navigate through this bar at the top. They can also go through this front, forward, and back through these sections with this little arrow. You can see, so there's all different subsections within the modules where we placed, course syllabus. We also had a short essay called The Art of Deliberation, which was another prompt to help them understand how to sort of conduct themselves online. We had, like I said, we had the overview. This is what they were to do, what their goals were. Then they went through the readings, the videos. We talked about the mode of deliberations, which was on Hangout. We helped them get set up for that. And then we asked them to deliberate based on a stimulus. If we have time, I can show you exactly these animations and how they worked. And then after they deliberated, they were asked to go through this survey. Did you feel the verdict was fair, that sort of thing. And then if they were to do the certificate, they just had to give us some feedback about what they participated in. Do you have any questions on how that, I'll just stop here for a second. Do you have any questions on how the course actually worked? Anyone, absolutely anyone. And you guys can log on today. It's still open. It's closed on Hangouts. It's not actually live anymore, but it's in archive status. But you can go through all of the content. You can actually post to the discussion board too. Yeah?
I'm sorry, if you already.
How it work?d
Yeah.
I can show you a video of UnHangout if we have time, but the UnHangout works, they log into a website. It's really a website, and you sign up. So you filled out a survey ahead of time what your optimal time was, and then we sent an email to everybody who signed up for that time and said, okay, go log on to this URL. They click the URL, they all log in. There's tiny little thumbnails of their pictures along the right-hand side. You can say, hey, I'm here, and there's this running stream of the 200 or 300 people that are in there. We had moderators. You have an administrator in the UnHangout that opens up the chat rooms and clicks on, and plays the video. So here you are, glad you're all here today. Here's what we want you to do, and they'll replay his prompt. And okay, now it's time to get into your break rooms, everybody, and then they unveil the break rooms. And they all just kind of click on one, and when it's a maximum of 10. When one filled up, you just get pushed into the next one, and off they go. We have no insight as to what happened after that point.
So it's essentially a chat.
It's also video. It's Google Hangout.
Okay.
So Google Hangout supports video and chat. Yes.
when they're
Yes,
making their contributions.
yes,
Wow.
absolutely, yep. Any question on that? And you can contact the UnHangout people and you can set up an UnHangout. They don't have, they can't support like thousands and thousands at a time, but they haven't had a huge amount of requests, I don't think. But I do think that you can contact them and see if you're interested in this technology, what you have available there.
Do you think there were problems in the
It could have, and we told people that they didn't have to do. And the other thing that you had to have for UnHangout was a Google Plus account, and most institutions don't enable Google Plus, so you had to have a personal account. Of course, now they could create a personal account that's completely anonymous, with a pseudonym, and Charlie would have welcomed that because he actually likes the idea of pseudonyms online. But it was completely up to them how they deliberated. The problem was, and we heard from this later, was that they had to go on the discussion board to try to find like-minded individuals and get their own group going, and that was a little hard for them. All right, so let's keep rolling along. So here we are. It's March 10th. We've been open for a few weeks for enrollments, and we got people. Oh my God, we were so excited. Who were they? What kind of people? So now I have to switch over. All right, I have to do this so you can hear them. Hope that this works. So here, these are actually videos. So when Charlie said introduce yourself, it was like one of the first exercises. Some people actually introduced themselves on video. Some people posted it publicly on YouTube, and these were the ones that I found on YouTube. So I'm not like breaking any FERPA rules or anything here.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Ahmad Azawi. I'm an undergraduate at UCLA, and behind me is actually our cool library. Whoa. But the story of my name that I'm going to share is actually, it's more of a fun fact. And the community I grew up in is a predominantly Arab one, and in my close group of friends of 9, we have 4 with the same name as me. Ahmad, or...
I'm not going to have you sit through all of them, but the question that Charlie posed to them to introduce themselves was to tell a story about their name. So that's why they talk about their name.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm introducing myself to the JuryX course. I live on a mountain in Queensland, Australia. I haven't always been Kate. I was christened Kay, but in my mid-30s, when I was trying to be...
Hello everyone, I am Giovanni, I am from Mexico, and I work in the Mexican Supreme Court for Justice Medina Mora. He was, a few days ago, he was the ambassador of Mexico to the United States.
Hello everyone, my name is Scott McLeod. I'm wearing my McLeod kilt because I'm heading to Scottish dancing this evening in...
So you're getting the feel for the people. Definitely self-selecting, right? It's a strange little class course, and we self-selected the people, and they were very excited to be part of the group. And here, so when they introduced themselves, they could introduce themselves in any way they wanted, and we used the discussion board to do that. And I went through the discussion board when I was looking for this presentation, and these are some of the things I thought were interesting that we pulled out. Got a 70-year-old grandmother, a high school student, a lawyer, people who are trying to decide if they wanted to go into the law. What were they looking for? They wanted personal enrichment. They were passionate about social change. They wanted to make a difference in the world. They wanted to have fun with learning. That was one thing that you could just feel coming off the discussion board, is people were lifelong learners. They just loved learning. They wanted this process. They were looking for the process. as more or as much as the content. A lot of people internationally wanted to understand how juries worked in the US. They wanted to understand that process. So I'm going to move over now to, put my glasses back on, to the insights. So this is, can you see that okay? This is the cool analytics that I was talking about that edX provides. So you can see the enrollment from when we opened the course, which is over here. And it went up. We opened, we debuted the course March 10th, and then it just kind of went up from there, and the course actually ended the beginning of June. So we had about, 3,500 people actually enroll. After the end of the course, it stayed in archive mode, as I said, and people continued to enroll all the way up till now, which is interesting because of that synchronous nature of it, but people still were interested in the content and what happened. Who were these people? Who were they? Okay, so they, the median age was 28, but we had, like I said, everybody from high school to in their 70s. The education level was bachelor's, master's degree. There's some big chunk at secondary ed, high school. You can see that sort of breakdown there. Gender was pretty evenly split. Geography, this is a really, I love this. This is kind of a Google Analytics kind of thing. You can see where people were coming from, and then you can drill down into it. 155 countries were represented. So that was, as MOOCs go, when I say mini-MOOC, this is what I mean, because, there are courses, at edX that have 30,000, 50,000. So this was a mini-MOOC. And I think that self-selecting nature, it certainly wasn't for everybody, but it did fill a niche. So how did people like it? Can you guess? If this came directly from the exit survey, about 100 people filled out the exit survey. And if I had to pick one thing from all of, and I read every single thing that we had a lot of open-ended questions in the exit survey, that really does sum it up. The people who stuck with it really loved it. We asked the question, how much did you enjoy this course? 100% enjoyed it at some level. That's pretty amazing. How did it compare? It was better or much better, nearly 80%. 92% said they were likely or very likely to recommend the course to another student, which I think is a pretty good proxy for satisfaction. And they thought the quality of instruction was 87% said excellent or very good. Talking about how they responded, this is just how they came out from their first module for Paul's graph. Does anybody not know what Paul's graph's about? I figured you probably all know. So you can see how they found. 32% were a hung jury. This was their very first group deliberation, so that's interesting. What I want to see is how is the stats for hung juries as it went on. I don't have that information, but I plan to get it. So participation. This was each module. And the numbers of people that we know participated in the deliberation. And those numbers are suspect, full disclosure, because it was completely self-reported. However, I will say, if you look at the number that responded to the debrief survey and the self-evaluation, not everybody was going to respond in the survey. So you think that number of people who participated had to be higher than the number of people who actually gave us the survey back, right? So I think there was, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say it was 500 at least. So this is a cool little graph. It's probably meaningless, but I wanted to show it to you. This is the very first time they took the self-reflection and the very last time. And the biggest change was between free-flowing, seeing themselves as free-flowing versus planning. They saw themselves as planning before, and they were much more free-flowing at the end. Now, whether or not this is really valid data, who knows? But it's interesting that there were changes, because what we're trying to teach is a process. So the fact that there were changes to how people attacked the process is kind of a validating thought. So Andrew Rawson is the new project manager on the new 2.0 JuryX, and he wrote a report based on all the data from the first round. And the most commonly cited strengths from learners was the deliberation experience itself, the instructor, relevance of the news-driven nature of the content. From the faculty and team, we really liked this idea of a MOOC, an experience instead of a course. We liked that it was driven by self-reflection, and the fact that it was so collaborative, so many different groups within Harvard. It's not real easy to get a lot of different groups within Harvard to all work together on common goals, and this really did happen, and they are using it to emulate, and they're hoping to reproduce that for other courses. And also there was a very strong component of the residential feeding into the understanding that we learned from residential, feeding into the online experience and back again, is something that Harvard X is really committed to. So here's some quotes. I'm probably going to kill you with too many quotes here, but I'm going to run through them really fast. I'm going to post this all online so you can look at it at your leisure. But this is what people said. And I have to say, especially this year, listening to the rancor and the stuff, the crap that you hear in the news, and it really kind of restored my faith in humans to read the information coming out of these discussion boards and these surveys. The fact that they really valued connecting with their fellow humans. I don't think we can understate that enough. At all. It's just amazing. They were pretty evenly split between whether they liked the legal case stuff or the topical stuff. They liked the process. Very few people had a problem with the way we designed the course. This is a really interesting comment because this is something that was near and dear to Charlie's heart, was learning that we, the people, really do make the law, right? It's not like some other entity, like some computer program. It's all us. And when you can engage in it directly, you understand that a little bit more viscerally, I think. Learning how to think. Where we needed improvement was the technology. The UnHangouts were difficult because we couldn't schedule them. People tended to get off track. They wanted more of Charlie. I'm going to run through this really quick so I have time for questions if you have them. So what's next? We actually have inspired another course at edX from the Divinity School. They decided they wanted this discussion thing to happen. They used UnHangouts. They had similar issues with UnHangouts, but they're really committed to this kind of process. We're going to launch into September 26th. Enrollment opens in July. Anyone can join, free of charge, absolutely. Archive self-paced version is still open right now. What are we going to do to change? So the group has decided that they're going to move from 12 weeks to 6, from 6 modules to 3. They're going to create a topical case. They're going to expand one of the legal cases, and then they're going to work through the Massachusetts ballot on legalization, which comes to a vote at it will coincide with the end of the course. So they're kind of trying to do something in real time. And then we had a lot of history of the jury materials kind of sprinkled through version 1. They're going to rebrand them and make them more of a theme, so it's a little more coherent for people. The other thing that we didn't do very well in the first iteration was we didn't do the feedback. We did it after the first module, but we didn't do it after that because there just wasn't time and people weren't clicking on it, and Charlie didn't have time to sit back into the studio. So we're going to come up with podcasts. Actually, I think that's going to be one of my projects, to figure out how we can get really quick turnaround on the data coming out of the deliberations, and we're going to have Charlie maybe something over a PowerPoint, just of an audio, where he gives them a debrief each week, because we really didn't do that well enough in the last iteration. We really are committed to doing that now. We're going to combine the self-reflection and the debrief into one, and Charlie's going to have a wrap-up graduation video. We're going to, UnHangout was great in a lot of ways, but it didn't allow for self-scheduling, which a lot of people complained about, and it didn't have any kind of a mechanism for keeping people on track. Talk About is a Stanford tool, UC San Diego. Look it up online, it's really cool. They have a self-scheduling ability, and they also have an agenda that will stay up in front and center while people are deliberating. So I think they're gonna move to that, and I will know a lot more about it after round 2. So maybe I'll be back here next year and talk about that. So why are we talking about this crazy unicorn thing? Do you think it would be applicable in your schools? I don't know. I know more people are learning online, and we probably should do something to make it more engaging. This is something from Talk about the ways that they're using online peer-to-peer communication. After graduation, there's a really interesting article from Peter Evans who talks about continuing education is not something that's coming from an institution, but coming from peer-to-peer in Twitter events and things like that, self-moderated Twitter events. So it's similar to what we're doing here, and that's ongoing adult education. The standards talk about experiential learning, conflict resolution, certainly got that. Cultural competency, how can you connect with other cultures? I mean, this is one easy way to do that. And the self-evaluation piece, it sort of works. So my final thought is that JuryX certainly isn't for everybody, but it does have a powerful, positive reaction to the people who engage in it. So is there a place that we can use this? And I took this picture last night at the library, and I just thought it might be a good way to wrap up. Last thing, all the materials that we created for Charlie are free for download at the Case Studies website. Ta-da! Questions? Oh, sure. It's casestudies.law.harvard.edu. Well, it wouldn't be for law students who just want to study for the bar.
Right.
Right? So there's this scale between content and process, right? And then there's another scale between peer-driven and faculty-driven, right? So I think certain courses need to be faculty-driven, certain courses need to be content-driven, but where can you put that scale where you can also offer peer-to-peer and process and topical discussion? Where would that fit in your curriculum, or maybe pre-curriculum? I don't know.
Was this a course that was
No.
Sorry, okay.
This is an online MOOC. It was a certificate only if they chose. There was a DCE course that was offered for credit, and they did something very similar, but they had more, they had like a final project. It was more on that slide, scale back to content and producing things, because you had to grade them, right? Yeah. And it was a positive experience for those students. There was about 50 of them. Yep.
So this puzzles me is that this is process.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yeah.
and a lot of sense to combine the two.
Mm-hmm.
What is
Well, you can look at, and again, it's like, there's another scale at work here too, which is online residential, right? And how does that move the dial for these things? So if you take residential, if you're talking about a residential course, can you inject, do you want to inject some sort of peer-to-peer learning? And do you want it online or do you want it face-to-face? Because when you're residential, you have the option, right? So I would say, and this is me putting on my case studies person hat, you know, I really believe in the case study method as engaging students, even in a really doctrinal class. I actually helped a faculty member at the law school who teaches M&A in corporations, right? Create a case study on UNICAL. Anybody here know anything about that? UNICAL was a seminal case in the 80s, which sort of set the stage for the legal remedies that corporations could use to fight off hostile takeovers. So things like poison pills, things like that. All that was sort of happened during the 1980s with T. Boone Pickens and all the... No, it was Holger Spaumann, right? So he came in and he said, I want the students to understand this more viscerally. I want them to be immersed in the time and have them really think it through instead of just reading the case. So we created a case study on UNICAL, and I put all kinds of stuff in it about, like the whole Dallas mystique, right? The whole T. Boone Pickens and how terrified he made big oil corporations and just kind of steeped them in that whole era of the 1980s. And we asked them not to look ahead and see how it all worked out, but we asked them to play the role of the corporate counsel for UNICAL. And you're stuck with this guy trying to take over your company. What do you tell the board of directors? And it's a great case. And we actually had a visiting professor, Logan Sawyer, taught the case. And I asked him, I called him up, I said, so how'd it go? And he said, I loved it. The students loved it. It's the future of legal education. He was so excited. We actually have a blog post from him about it. So I think even if it's just one thing that you do in a class to change it up, to get the students interacting with each other, and there's all kinds of different flavors of doing that. So JuryX is another small MOOC that is more structured and has more content than Charlie's. So if you want to do this sort of thing, but with a lot more structure, you can look at what JuryX does with, that's Terry Fisher. What he does is he has canned lectures. The students all watch the canned lecture, and then they have weekly breakout groups with TAs. And they actually go on Adobe Connect and they discuss little mini case studies that illuminate the lecture. Now, that's expensive. Like, where are you going to get all those TAs, right? This is way less expensive. But there could be ways to do this, right? Any other questions about this? Yeah.
So I have a question about, what, with all of this data, right? Are you looking to? Has he looked that far into it?
Yeah, and there has been talk about how, like, HarvardX and edX are really a lot about research, right? Big time about research and collecting data. And because we didn't have big numbers, I mean, right now the data that they sort of look at is enrollments and how they drop over time. You get the 30,000 people, how many actually get through to the end. That's sort of where it's kind of at, the click-throughs and, all of that stuff. This is so new and it's so different and it's one of a kind that I think nobody is really thinking yet how to do the research in a way that's really robust. So that, I will let you know. Because as we keep going with it and we have we can compare iterations to iterations, we can see what things work. I don't know that there's any thought about reforming the jury system, although he would like to, but I don't know if we could use this experience.
It's just interesting.
Yes, it definitely does. Uh-huh.
How would you
Well, it was his idea. So he had the big picture conception of what he wanted to do. And he drove the content. Like, he really did decide what topics he wanted. He picked Hebert. He picked Paul's graph, right? He decided that those were the things that would open people's minds up to these are good jury deliberation topics. And they did work really well. So he knew, after all these many decades of teaching, what things would work in this environment. So he chose all of that. And together we worked through the niceties of the process, but it was his general idea, the prompt, the deliberation, that cycle.
So, and what my last question is,
Yeah.
or do you think, or are there things the institution?
It depends on what your goals are and how many people you want to include. So first question.
Suppose it's a residential class and you just want to.
Yeah, so if it's a residential class, it's going to be easier, right? Because
Yeah.
you've already got this, captured audience, and the captured audience is already behind your pin wall, right? So you could, if you have Canvas or some other kind of LMS, you can have, there's ways of communicating online. You could use the discussion forums in Canvas, which aren't that great. I will say that we need a better discussion forum online. Everybody complains about the one on edX, it's very static. Piazza is possible, so that's one way to connect. The Google Hangout and UnHangout is a good way to go. In Canvas, they have groups, and in groups, you could possibly set up times to meet face-to-face, or you could chat. There is a chat function. Although the chat function in Canvas is only course-wide, not group-wide, but I'm trying to get them to do that in groups. So I think you could set up like Hangouts where they talk. You don't need if you're in a residential course, you could do the prompt. Off they go into their own Hangouts, or they go face-to-face. It could be up to them. And then you just bring it back. What you need is the content. We have the content. Feel free to download and use it. Let us know how it goes. We'd love to see more people using the content here. And not just Charlie's content. There's lots of content up here that we've used in other classes where we've created case studies. And I would really like to hear back from you all. What kind of case studies are you looking for? Is there something that is maybe I could sell to one of the faculty to create that would be useful to the community to keep creating this content? We really want to have this for people to use.
It's very funny that you use. One is for expedited.
Right.
Expedited.
So you're saying it's too much of an outlier to use?
No,
Or
this is a fascinating.
yeah,
Go to their
right.
course and you can.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's terrific. The other amazing thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
math that reveal.
He actually has a worksheet on that.
And work out
Yes.
that.
That's one of the things the students have to do first, actually. Yeah, all of that is available if you're interested. Free. Yes. So I don't know exactly how much it ended up being, but typically the grants from to produce a course from HarvardX are between 50 and 70,000. 50.
Was the services?
That was paid for by DCE because they were creating a DCE course. Yeah. And it was in Canvas too. It was rolled out in Canvas. Any other questions? Any feedback? Yeah.
Curious.
It was March 10th last year. It went from March 10th till the beginning of June 9th, I think, last year. Sorry, what do you? Buy-in to create a course or buy-in to use the same method? know because I don't like sit in the faculty meetings, what they think about doing a MOOC. I can tell you that it feels to me, looking at it, it's kind of a feather in their cap to get one of these grants to do it. Certainly Charles Freed's has been really well received. He's doing another iteration of his course, and I think, I think he feels really proud of it. And if you think about the motivation for why you would do it, he's reaching thousands and thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people. So, and he does a wonderful job. It's worth looking at it. They did animations on the on some of his stories about contracts. It's really great. It's very engaging, and he's very clear about this isn't going to make you a lawyer. This is just going to help you understand contracts better, which is a really good public service. So as far as why they would create, that's one reason. And then another is, why would anybody else use this system? So as I said, there's the Divinity School's already using this, and I saw them talk about it at the Harvard IT Summit, which was a couple weeks ago. And I went up to them afterwards. I said, hey, I worked on JuryX. Did you know about that? And they said, oh my God, JuryX is the pioneer. And I said, well, I'm going to do a presentation on JuryX. He goes, you can tell them that you guys were the pioneers. And so I'm telling you. So it looks like, for the people who want this, who like this, who see its value, we did break some ground and show people what could happen. Me either.
Very exciting to me.
Yep. Yeah, it's, I don't know exactly where the money comes from, but we did get a large endowment for this type of thing. So I think it comes from a certain pot of money that was specific. It's not Harvard Law School, it's Harvard. Yeah, there's a pot of money out there. It's not mine. I have nothing to do with it. But yeah, and I don't know how long it will last. They do say that it's not sustainable to forever give them all away, forever and ever. So there may be some level. They're already starting, I think, to charge for their certificate programs now. I think they're $40. So you can do free auditing or $40 certificate program. Well, thank you all for coming, and please come and find me. Thank you. Find me if you have any further questions. Sorry?
Every time I hear someone talk about a pot of money, I see screws.
Big pot of money, yeah.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Miguel Mordo at Duke. Could I possibly get your card?
Sure.
Can I follow up?
Yeah, absolutely. Got a few of them.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Happy to help.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know if we will put as much effort into it, but we could certainly.
Well, you don't need
model
to.
it, right? Yeah.
That's my point. It's like you don't. I mean, we could because we had the grant, but yeah, I think you could do this on a shoestring.
Yeah, no,
I really
absolutely.
do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And we have some folks who are into IP. They really dig this.
Great.
Awesome.
Awesome. We do have, if you look on the case study site, we have some, we did a similar course. It was residential. It was based on discussion and case studies, and it was cyber law and intellectual property.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so check those out.
Definitely will. Thank you.
Yep.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
So I came from Hopkins. I found you George Washington.
Uh-huh.
So at Hopkins, I did a MOOC. Yes, department, and then there was a.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm totally familiar with
You know what the
the
deal
whole
is.
business of the MOOC.
Right, and they do sort of do this sort of canned thing, right? Because it's a new thing, and I had this thing, I didn't actually say it, but you have this brand new technology, which is MOOCs. They're gonna be pretty traditional about how they do it because it's such uncharted territory. But then when you put this completely wild, crazy idea on top of it, we really didn't know what we were gonna expect, you know.
Yeah, I can only imagine, especially when it's peer-driven, not faculty-driven learning.
We had no idea what we were gonna get into. We were scared. That's why it was really a scary idea. But it did work out. It really did.
Do you have a business card?
Yeah.
I do believe in the next couple of years I'll be doing similar stuff at GW.
Great. We're happy to help.
So you have experience.
We
I
do.
mean, you have to reach out to.
Oh, I'm happy, really,
for,
that's what we're here for, so.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. I hope to see more of this. I truly believe in it. I think it will make the world a better place.
Perfect. I agree. I mean, yeah, you know, when people think about learning, schools need to have a portfolio. It has to be, just can't be face to face.
Right.
It can't be distance. It needs to be a portfolio of MOOC, face to face, online, and even to some degree of, you know, community. Opening up the doors for like seminars on, like, for example, for law would be contracts, like real estate contracts.
Right,
So,
right.
stuff like that. My vision of GW.
Right, right. Well, look at the contracts MOOC. Just go and sign in and go through it and watch what they have in there. Thing is, you know, you can riff off of that. I think you can have, you can have students log in and watch the videos during the MOOC itself.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned, which I think is it's overlooked in this development, is the importance of video of uses the interaction.
Yes, yeah, they really wanted that interaction.
Yeah, something that people always
Yeah, absolutely,
is
they do.
the video of the faculty member.
And they do want it to feel interactive and not just talking head.
Talking head.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. All right, well, it's good to meet you. Good.
Pull up a browser.